Due to the continuing COVID-19 pandemic, the U.S. government has been unrolling updates and extensions to legislation providing relief to businesses. The Treasury has been providing guidance on these laws. Today's video is a short summary of some of these changes. First off, the PPP and a bit of background. The first round of funding ended in August of 2020. The 60-40 rule applied, which means that you had to use at least 60% of the funds on payroll and the rest on other allowable expenses. Those who did not use up the full amount will need to repay the remaining funds to the SBA at a 1% interest rate. The maturity period of the loan is 2 or 5 years. You would want to check your contract to see which period applies to you. Here are some important dates to bear in mind with respect to the PPP. There's currently a preferential treatment window ongoing for businesses with 20 employees or less. So if you qualify, you can apply and get loans in some cases within the same day. After this window closes, you can still apply, but you do not get the preferential treatment. On March 31st, the second round of funding for the PPP closes. While there's some chatter about the loan program extending, nothing's confirmed yet, so you'd want to get your application through before this date. For businesses that applied early last year, the first loan payments, unless they apply for forgiveness, will come due in April to August of 2021. The rule is that your first payments are due 10 months after the end of the covered period, so this is an important date to bear in mind with respect to forgiveness. The deadline, the absolute deadline to apply for forgiveness is the loan maturity date, which for some people will be in 2022 and for others in 2025. The second draw of the PPP is currently ongoing. So there are certain rules regarding that. You can apply based on payroll in either 2019 or 2020. If we do your payroll, we will tell you which period gets you more money and you can apply accordingly. As of March 3rd, the rules for Schedule C employers have changed. Those who have not yet gotten any PPP funds can now apply based on gross income from 2019 or 2020. If you remember earlier, they had to use net profit numbers, which would have naturally gotten them a smaller loan amount. So if you're a Schedule C employer and you did not get any PPP earlier because your net profit was 0 or too low, now is the time to apply. The same rules as the first draw, such as the 60-40 rule, apply. So how do you qualify for the second draw of the PPP? You qualify for the second draw if your business has less than 300 employees, you have or will use the full amount of the first PPP loan, and, this is important, your gross receipts in any calendar quarter of 2020 were 25% less than your gross receipts for the same quarter in 2019. And if you need the loan to support the ongoing operations of the business. If we do your bookkeeping, we will help you calculate your eligibility for the second draw of the PPP. So the PPP allowable expenses, the rule for the expenses is the same. 60% of the loan has to be used for payroll costs, and the remaining 40% can be used for other allowed expenses. Most of the allowable expenses are the same as we've discussed in earlier newsletters and videos. However, for the second PPP, you're allowed to use up to 40% of the loan amount in total for additional other expenses. These other expenses include damage incurred during vandalism or looting in the 2020 public disturbances that was not covered by insurance or other compensation. In covered operations expenditures, which are payments for business software or cloud computing services, product or service delivery, payment and payroll processing, human resources, sales and billing functions, or accounting. Covered supplier costs, which are expenditures for the supply of goods that are essential to the operations that are made based on a contract in effect before the covered period. And covered worker protection expenditures, which are expenditures incurred to adapt the activities of a PPP borrower to comply with federal, state, or local requirements or guidance during the pandemic. Now for PPP forgiveness. If you want the loan amount removed from your liabilities, you will want to apply for forgiveness, preferably as soon as possible. Your loan payments come due 10 months after your covered period ends, so if possible, apply before that. Earlier, the EIDL advance that businesses got was being deducted from forgiveness, but now that rule has changed, you get to keep that amount as well. To apply for forgiveness, you will need to provide payroll documentation and documents for any other expense that you used your funds for. And if we do your payroll or if we help you keep track of your expenses, we will help you collect this documentation. Now, on to the important bit. There are 3 applications for forgiveness. If your loan amount was less than 50 grand, you will use the 3508S, which is the simplest form, and there are literally only a handful of blanks that need to be filled out. You won't even have to reduce your forgiveness if you let go of employees. If your loan amount was between 50 and 150,000, you can use the 3508S. However, if you let go of employees or you reduce their payroll substantially, your loan amount will get reduced. If you did not reduce payroll by more than 25%, and if you were forced to close your business for a certain time period in compliance with government orders, you can use the 3508EZ, and your forgiveness amount will not be reduced. This application can also be used by businesses that have loan amounts higher than 150 grand. If, however, your loan was greater than 150,000 and you let go of employees or your business was not forced to shut down, you will need to use the 3508, which is the longest form. Your forgiveness amount will be reduced based on how much you reduced your wages and how many people you let go. Now we'll talk about the employee retention credit. You can get this credit for wages even if you got the PPP, and this could potentially be tens of thousands of dollars that your business can save for 2020 or 2021. For 2020, the Treasury will pay back 50% of wages paid by a business through this credit, up to $5,000 per employee for the entire year. Business owners cannot claim this credit for their own wages. How do you qualify? If you had more than a 50% drop in gross receipts in any quarter of 2020 as compared to the same quarter in 2019, you start qualifying. This credit continues until the end of the quarter, during which your gross receipts go up to 80% of your 2019 quarter's receipts. This credit is to be claimed on Form 941. Since these have already been filed for 2020, we're amending the 2020 forms for our payroll clients to claim the credit. The ERC for 2021 is slightly different. Each quarter is handled separately. So to determine eligibility, you will check quarter 1 and quarter 2 separately. If you had a more than 20% drop in gross receipts as compared to the same quarter in 2019 or the previous quarter, you get to claim the credit. And this time, the credit is even higher. You can claim 70% of wages paid during the quarter, up to $7,000 per employee. We're claiming this credit during the quarter, so if you think you're eligible based on gross receipts, please let us know before April 10th at the latest. We will need to amend payroll in order to claim it in a timely manner. Finally, on to the important bit. How do these things affect your taxes? Well, the PPP is both forgivable and you can claim the expenses which you paid through PPP funds on your tax return. However, if you claim the Employee Retention Credit or the COVID-19 Sick, Family, and Child Care Leave Credit for your employees, you cannot claim the amount of the credit as expenses on your tax return. Another very important thing to note is that you cannot claim the credits together and you cannot claim credits for the wages you paid through PPP funds. So, if you use the ERC for some wages, you cannot use the FFCRA credit for the same wages. Also, if you use PPP funds to pay payroll in a certain month, you cannot use the credits during the same time. So there is no double dipping in that sense. That is all. If you have any questions, you're always welcome to contact us.